Right, in this tutorial we are going to look at masks. First, we will import an image. Before using masks, we must set the position and size of the image. This is because the moment we create a mask, the image position and size controls are locked. These controls, this cursor would now move the mask, not the image. Actually, this cursor moves whatever we have defined here. If we select the background of the main image, you will see it is locked. If we wanted to have the controls available again, we would have to delete all the masks. That is why it is best to set the position and size of the image before starting to work with the masks. Alright, let's see now how masks can be defined, or in what specific way they can be defined. Well, let's proceed to create a new mask, right? We have 4 options. The ones above are for defining the mask manually, and the ones below automatically. Let's look at the manual one. The way to define it manually is by using the brush. So we can select the brush size with this control, or if we have a mask selected and are inside the image, we can increase or decrease the brush size with the mouse wheel. And now it would simply be a matter of defining that mask. Subtract, well, what it does is remove the brush stroke from the mask. And let's look at the automatic way. We delete the current mask, create a new one, and the automatic function detects edges precisely to generate it. Also, we can adjust the detection sensitivity. If the colors we are looking for or the edge had very similar colors, we would have to set a high sensitivity. This, however, has a drawback. It interprets the slightest color variation as a limit. It sets it as a limit. The drawback here is that we must specify much more of the image content. Instead, let's delete the mask, create a new one, and now specify a lower sensitivity. This way, the mask is created much faster than if we had high sensitivity. The drawback is that it may include parts of the image we do not want. In that case, we use manual subtraction to remove the parts of the image we do not wish to include in the mask. Alright, this mask, at this very moment, all these controls are delimited by the same mask. This means, in essence, that if we alter any of the controls, the result will be to alter only the inside of the mask. Well, these controls are independent for each mask. Each one has its own color and threshold levels. We can also label the masks. Let's call this one hair and create a new one. We will call this one eyes. We define it manually, and for example, let's change the eye color. We simply change the hue, add some contrast, and there, the eyes are changed. These levels, as I said, are now independent of the hair mask levels. So here, for example, we could alter. Let's make her a redhead, like this. Right, here we see some levels. However, if we go to the eyes mask, we see different levels. That is, each mask has its own color and threshold levels. Right, there is another way to define the mask besides manual and automatic, which is by using a color. This is very useful, for example, with logos. Logos usually have a limited color palette, so it is very practical to use this control. Let's see an example. We are going to load a logo. Alright, here we have this logo. Though if we try to digitize it, we would run into the serious problem that detects Sistemas in particular merges directly with K2. One way to solve this would be to create a mask for each color. Let us do that. We will label the first mask as K2, and the color mask control will be used to define the mask through a color. If we click on the color selection button and choose, for example, the navy blue tone, we would then have the entire K2 mask fully defined, right? Here we have this level bar. Let's analyze calmly how this works in practice. If we adjust the level bar to its maximum point, we are telling it to generate the mask exclusively using only the color we have selected. If we lower the bar, we are telling it to include not only the color we selected, but also nearby shades, meaning colors similar to the one we marked within that mask. As we lower the bar further, we include more variations of that color in the mask. The text nice systems additives has a shadow. This shadow is cast onto K2. If we generate the mask using only the blue, the shadow is excluded, but here we want to include that gradient. So by lowering the bar, we see it includes that gradient, that shadow, and this way we perfectly define the K2. If we lowered it too much, well, in that case we see it even includes the shadows of the word systems, which are tones similar to the blue. Right, let's try to configure it so it includes those shadows while making sure all the other elements remain completely excluded. Right, this stuff Let's continue with the rest of the masks. We label this one as systems and define it with this color. Yes, this defines the entire mask directly without needing to change the level. And finally, we will define a specific mask for the net text. For the red color, we specify the red color. Perfect. We now have a mask defined for each of the colors. Doing it by color is much faster than the automatic process, since that would force us to manually click on each of the letters. Through color selection, we have defined all the logo components at once. Well, it is already generating a result for us directly. This is because we set a threshold for the image background. We remove that threshold so it does not alter the rest of the mask and select, for example, K2. We can specify a fill type for each mask. That fill can be by threshold or solid. Solid means setting the mask pixels as active, inactive, or inverting them. On is black, off is white, and not inverts the value. Let us proceed to set it to on. And now we can see the result. Let's move on to the mask called systems. We will do the same, leaving the solid on, and we encounter the same problem as before. The text systems merges with the K2 element. Well, in this case, what we can do is try this. We can set the fill to white instead of black, and we also have the option to add a border to the shape to this mask. So in that case, we have the same options, on, off, and not. We set it to on. Well, we have now solved the problem of the two texts merging. Although, well, there might be another issue here, and that is that the border goes too far into the mask's fill. In that case, what we can do is increase the thickness. And that way, we would have the text systems better defined, finally set to solid. We can even add a border to match the size with the system's text. And with this, we would have the digitized logo, solving the problem of the system's text merging with K2. Well, solid fills also give us the opportunity to draw freehand. For example, if we created a new mask, we define it as a solid and set it to operate in manual mode. We set the brush thickness. Well, in this case, whereas if we draw here, it is practically the same as if we did it freehand. We apply the same. Off sets it to white, overwriting the previous, not inverts the points. What was on becomes off and vice versa, and this control or cursor is now used to move the mask. We can also change the order. Let's see. We will delete this mask and create a new one that we will call circle. And we try to make a circle.
we create a new mask that we call square.
And we try to draw a square.
To differentiate the two masks, for example, meix com toques ja les fallamos ja fuiou, we will set the square to solid black and the circle to white, and we will also add a border. Well, here, as we can see, the square is in front of the circle. The square is in front of the circle. We can change the order, meaning we can place the square behind. By clicking on behind, the circle is now in front, just as it appears in the list. The square is behind and the circle is in front. As we can see, we can change the order of the masks. Well, with this we have finished reviewing the topic of masks. Now we still have to look at the mask fills using the threshold controls, and we will see that in the next video. Questo non fa prima una vecchia